Professor Qix-9 adjusted his tentacles nervously as he watched the newest addition to his xenobiology class. The human, Maya Torres, sat in the back row with that peculiar expression her species wore when they found something amusing. Which, frankly, was most of the time. How these bipedal mammals had conquered half the galaxy while constantly snickering at everything was beyond his understanding. Today, Qix-9 announced to his collection of multi-limbed, scaled, and occasionally gaseous students, we shall examine the most dangerous predator in the Andromeda sector. The Razorclaw of Vega Prime. A collective shudder rippled through the amphitheater. Even Blix-22, who came from a species that literally ate molten metal for breakfast, went slightly green around his gill slits. Maya raised her hand. Professor, quick question. Is this the same creature that supposedly ate 3 Galactic Marine platoons last month? Supposedly? Qix-9's eye stalk swiveled toward her. Young human, there was nothing supposed about it. The beast devoured them entirely. Armor, weapons, dignity, everything. Right. Maya nodded sagely, though that infuriating smile never left her lips. And we're going to what, exactly? Look at pictures? Because I've got to be honest, your hologram technology isn't exactly Oscar-worthy. Before Qix-9 could explain what an Oscar was or why his holograms might win one, the containment chamber at the center of the room began to hum. 30 tons of reinforced titanium carbide walls, energy barriers, and enough warning signs to paper a small moon. Inside, something the size of a small transport shuttle paced back and forth. Behold, Qix-9 said with theatrical flair, the apex predator of 3 solar systems. Notice the retractable claws, each one capable of slicing through starship hulls. Observe the mandible structure, designed to crush bones like crackers. And those eyes, those horrible, soulless eyes that have stared into the faces of countless victims. The creature pressed against the transparent aluminum viewing window. 8 feet tall, covered in midnight black scales, with 6 arms ending in claws that could probably open a can of soup very efficiently. Its multiple eyes glowed an ominous orange, and when it opened its mouth, rows of teeth glittered like a sadist's jewelry collection. Every non-human student scrambled backward. Xenobiology actually fainted, which was impressive considering his species didn't have blood pressure. Even Nex 333, who bragged constantly about his warrior heritage, made a noise that sounded suspiciously like his mother calling for him. Maya, meanwhile, leaned forward in her seat. Oh, who's a big scary monster, she cooed in the same voice one might use with a particularly fluffy kitten. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Qix-9's tentacles knotted themselves into what his species considered the equivalent of a facepalm. Miss Torres, I must insist you take this seriously. That creature has a kill count that would make a supernova jealous. Professor, Maya said, standing up and walking toward the containment unit, has anyone ever actually tried communicating with one of these things? Like, saying hello instead of shooting first and asking questions later? Communicate? Qix-9's voice cracked. It's a mindless killing machine. The very definition of pure predatory instinct. The creature suddenly stopped pacing. Its 6 arms pressed against the glass, and it tilted its massive head, watching Maya approach. The glowing eyes tracked her movement with an intensity that made the professor's organs rearrange themselves in terror. Look at that body language, Maya observed, completely ignoring the fact that everyone else in the room was preparing their last wills and testaments. Classic anxiety posture. Repetitive movement patterns. Poor baby's probably stressed out of his mind being cooped up in there. Stressed? Qix-9's voice went up 3 octaves. It's a predator. So are house cats, Maya replied cheerfully. Doesn't stop humans from giving them little sweaters and embarrassing names like Mr. Whiskers. She was now directly in front of the containment chamber, separated from certain death by nothing but technology and what appeared to be either supreme confidence or complete insanity. The creature pressed its face against the glass, breathing heavily. Each exhale fogged the transparent barrier. There we go, Maya whispered. Just take some deep breaths, big guy. Nobody here wants to hurt you. Idio, shouted Blix-22 from the back. I want to hurt it very much before it hurts me. Maya ignored him, placing her palm flat against the glass. The creature immediately mirrored the gesture, its massive claw covering her entire hand through the barrier. The classroom fell silent except for the sound of Xenobiology regaining consciousness and immediately fainting again. Maya, Qix-9 said slowly, please step away from the containment unit. Now. In a minute, Professor. We're having a moment here. She looked up into those orange eyes, which seemed considerably less soulless than they had moments before. You know what I think? I think somebody's been very lonely. That's when the power went out. Emergency lighting bathed the room in hellish red as the building's backup systems kicked in. But more importantly, The gentle hum of the containment field died with a sound like reality taking its last breath. 30 students and one professor found themselves in a room with an apparently free apex predator and one human who thought it needed a therapist. The creature's claw tips began to glow as they extended to their full, terrifying length, and Maya Torres smiled like she'd just been handed the best present of her life. The emergency lockdown protocols should have activated. Steel barriers should have slammed down, sealing every exit. Automated defense turrets should have emerged from the walls, ready to turn the escaped predator into very expensive confetti. Instead, the classroom's ancient backup system wheezed like Qix-9's great uncle after climbing stairs, and absolutely nothing happened. Well, Maya said conversationally as the containment field flickered and died, this is either going to be really interesting or really short. The Razorclaw stepped through the dissipating energy barrier with surprising grace for something that looked like it could bench press a moon. Its 6 arms moved in perfect coordination, claws glinting in the red emergency lighting like some nightmare disco ball. 30 alien students pressed themselves against the back wall so hard they probably left permanent impressions. Qix-77 had given up on consciousness entirely and was now just twitching occasionally. Even Qix-9 had retracted his eye stalks so far they were practically inside his skull. The creature stood in the center of the room, head swiveling as it took in its surroundings. When those orange eyes fixed on the huddled mass of terrified students, it let out a sound that was part roar, part mechanical grinding, and entirely horrifying. "Oh, for crying out loud," Maya muttered. "You're all making it nervous with all that fear stench you're pumping out." "Fear stench?" Qix-9 whispered from behind his podium. "That's not fear stench. That's the perfectly rational biological response to imminent death. It's stress pheromones, Professor, and you're broadcasting them like a distress beacon." Maya took a step forward, completely ignoring the fact that the creature could probably turn her into human-shaped confetti without breaking a sweat. "Hey there, handsome. Sorry about the crowd. They're not exactly the welcoming committee, are they?" The Razorclaw turned toward her, and every remaining conscious student held their breath. This was it. The moment their weirdly optimistic human classmate became a cautionary tale about the dangers of anthropomorphizing apex predators, Maya held out her hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. The creature stared at her for a long moment. Then it did something that defied every xenobiology textbook in the galaxy. It sat down, all 6 arms folded neatly, massive haunches settling on the floor with surprising delicacy. The glowing claws retracted until they were barely visible. And those supposedly soulless orange eyes fixed on Maya with an expression that could only be described as hopeful. "Good boy," Maya said warmly. "See? That wasn't so hard." Qix-9's voice cracked like a teenager asking someone to prom. "It's supposed to be ripping you apart right now. Why would it do that?" Maya asked, taking another step closer. "Look at this poor thing. When's the last time anyone showed it basic kindness instead of either shooting at it or locking it in a box?" She was close enough now to touch the creature. Close enough for it to grab her with any of its 6 arms and end the conversation permanently. Instead, it leaned forward and made a sound like a freight train purring. "Oh, you are a sweetie, aren't you?" Maya reached out and actually, impossibly, scratched behind what might charitably be called an ear. Just a big lonely predator who wants someone to be nice to him. The purring grew louder. The creature's eyes began to close in what looked suspiciously like contentment. "This is impossible," Qix-9 whispered. "Razorclaws are killing machines. Apex predators. They can't what, Professor?" Maya asked, still scratching. "Feel lonely? Want companionship? Experience basic emotions?" She looked up at her terrified instructor with that infuriating human smile. Just because something's an effective predator doesn't mean it's evil. Humans are pretty decent predators too, you know. Blix-22, who had been slowly edging toward the door, froze. "Humans are predators?" "Well, yeah." Maya shrugged as if this should be obvious. Binocular vision for tracking prey, omnivorous teeth for eating pretty much anything, persistence hunting capabilities that can run down animals until they collapse from exhaustion. We're basically the galaxy's most successful persistence predators. We just happen to also make really good cookies. The creature suddenly flopped onto its side, revealing a surprisingly soft-looking belly covered in smaller, more delicate scales. "Oh, you want belly rubs, don't you, big guy?" Maya immediately obliged, running her hands over the creature's surprisingly warm underside. "There we go. That's what you wanted all along, wasn't it?" The purring reached seismic levels. 6 massive arms waved gently in the air like some bizarre, contented flower. Qix-9 felt his worldview crumbling like a cookie in milk. But the Marines it killed, did they try talking to it first?" Maya asked without looking up from her belly-rubbing duties. "Or did they show up with weapons and assume the worst?" The professor's tentacles went limp as the horrible truth dawned on him. Every encounter with a Razorclaw had been military. Armed forces expecting a fight, finding exactly what they were looking for. You mean, he said slowly, they might have been defending themselves? Bingo. Maya grinned at him over the happily purring creature. Turns out when you approach something with the assumption it wants to kill you, it tends to make that assumption come true. Funny how that works. Slowly, carefully, a few of the braver students began to inch forward. Next 333 was the first to actually approach, his warrior pride apparently unable to handle being outdone by a human in the bravery department. It's actually kind of cute, he admitted, watching the creature's contented face. All predators are cute when they're happy, Maya said cheerfully. Haven't you ever seen a cat stretch? Or a dog getting belly rubs? Same basic principle. Within minutes, what had been a classroom full of terrified students had become something resembling the galaxy's strangest petting zoo. Even Qix-77 had regained consciousness long enough to tentatively pat one of the creature's arms. Qix-9 watched his students cooing over the apex predator of 3 solar systems and realized he was going to have to rewrite his entire curriculum. Ms. Torres, he said finally, I believe I owe you an apology. No worries, Professor. Maya looked up from where she was now braiding some of the creature's smaller arm spikes. Just remember this next time someone tells you something's irredeemably dangerous. Sometimes the scariest monsters just need someone to be kind to them. The creature opened one orange eye and looked directly at Qix-9. For a moment, the professor tensed, waiting for some sign of the killer instinct he'd spent years teaching about. Instead, the creature made a soft chirping sound and closed its eye again, completely relaxed under the attention of 30 new friends. Well, Qix-9 muttered to himself, this is going to make for one interesting final exam. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he began to wonder what other supposedly irredeemable monsters might just be waiting for someone to offer them belly rubs instead of bullets.